Hello, everyone. Welcome to Silicon Valley Health Institute. Happy holidays. Hopefully you're enjoying our annual potluck here. Please help yourself to anything during the night here. Any first-time visitors? Oh, welcome. Hopefully you'll be back. Once a month, we're here every third week of the month. And we have tons of videos on our website, svhi.com, to go back and see all the great speakers that we've had over the years here. So we're a 501c3, which is we rely on you for your memberships and donations. We're a 501c3. It's $10 at the door or $60 a year, which works out to $5 a meeting. So appreciate your support there. If you have a cell phone, can you please silence it? And if you're concerned about EMFs, you can turn them off. If you need to take an emergency call, please step outside so we can keep the focus on the speakers there. The restrooms, not sure we'll have a break tonight because we have a single speaker, so we'll likely just kind of march through probably till 9 o'clock, roughly 9:15, just depending on how things unfold here. All right. Any other announcements of health things to go see? Any interesting news that you might have? Nothing along those lines? Okay. So the first thing we usually do here is we open up the floor to questions. We have several experts here that can help. Maybe Beth might add a few here, a few answers to some of the questions you have. But if you have any questions at all, please raise your hand. One of the things we need to do is make sure I get you the microphone because we are videotaping it and we want to hear your questions and your voice too. So are there any questions in regards to your health?
Yes. Does anyone here know of any functional medicine doctors, especially those who might take Medicare in this area or towards Cupertino, but even here?
I know Philomena Trinidad is in Santa Cruz. That would probably be the first recommendation. Susan, do you know any functional medicine doctors here in this general? Yeah, I did, yeah.
I've already told her about Philomena, and I think I've had the discussion to go on ifm.org. And what? Okay. Okay. You go on ifm.org and find out who's a functional medicine practitioner. But be wary. Just because they took one course doesn't mean they know a lot. If they've been certified, we'll say IFM certified practitioner, they know a little more. But, you know.
Just because somebody has some kind of functional medicine experience doesn't mean that they'll take Medicare. And so the person to talk to, call up the office and talk to the office manager. They'll have that answer to that question. You won't have to bother anybody else. Most MDs who practice alternative, complementary, fringe medicine don't take any health insurance at all, because the penalties, the legal penalties for fraud is, I think, up to $5,000 per day per infraction. And it's cumulative. And so a doctor can be immediately bankrupt by any allegation of fraud, even if there isn't any. So most of the doctors that I know of who practice good medicine, they won't touch any kind of insurance at all. It's all out of pocket.
Which obviously therein lies a bit of a challenge because a lot of people look to get insurance for their health, and yeah. All right.
I've worked with many of those physicians, and I just want to say it's really important that we see functional medicine as, not only is it the medicine of the future, but it's very different from fringe alternative, because I've been in the field since the 70s, and I just want to say that what I call it is it's two different types of modalities, and that's why when people ask me, do I take insurance, what I always say is, standard medicine is great when you break a bone or you need surgery, and your crisis medicine, that's what insurance is for. But what we tend to do is confuse when we evaluate how our body's functioning. That's a whole different paradigm. That's not insurance-based at all. I mean, I don't think we're addressing that. It's about the root cause and looking at the underlying issues of how I'm functioning versus saying I have a pathology. And I'll give you an example. One of my new clients was just told he was actually told, well, you have too much bile, so the only way we deal with it from the Stanford doctors was we're going to have surgery and remove your gallbladder. But he had no pathology in the gallbladder except he had too much bile. A functional doctor would look at that and say, what is the root cause of why there's so much bile and it clogged up, and let's deal with that rather than removing the organ. So it's a very different philosophy. And I do know that there's a company called alternativehealthinsurance.com. So if you go online and you search for insurances that cover, they used to call it alternative. They may have changed, but they cover root cause, naturopathic doctors and some functional MDs. So there are some insurance companies. It's more about identifying what the root cause is versus the pathology also.
All right. Any other questions? Floor's open. Nothing?
I was asked by somebody the other day who had a very high sugar level, and I mean, when you get a hemoglobin of 9 or something, H1C of 9, then you've got to take medicines. But what other things can this person do to go toward wellness? I mean, obviously a ketogenic type diet, avoiding toxins, which Beth will tell us a lot about. But any other suggestions for a person that would be in that situation?
So for those of you who don't know, Steve Fowkes is our technical director here, so I always go to him first.
There are actually two very radically different diets that are frequently used to treat diabetes and even reverse type 2 diabetes. And one of them is a vegan diet, a raw vegan diet. And raw vegetables are often take so much digestive power that the amount of energy that you get out of them is a lot less than cooked vegetables and a lot less than other kinds of foods. And so people go into fat burning mode, and that bypasses the sugar pathway and reduces their insulin resistance. And if the islet cells aren't dead, their diabetes can reverse. And the other one is a ketogenic diet where you just restrict the carbs deliberately, and you can eat cooked food and other things like that, and even eat a fair amount of meat, although protein does have some carb activity. And you just restrict the carb to the point that you go into fat burning mode, and then takes the burden off the sugar pathway, and the type 2 diabetes can reverse. And those are very much diametric kinds of diets, but what they have in common is that they induce ketosis or fat burning mode. So that's my suggestion, is have somebody buy some keto sticks and test their urine every day or several times a day. It's like 15 cents per test. And then start restricting carbs or eating more and more vegetables until you see the paper turn pink.
A couple points. The toxins are extremely important because they work synergistically. Like some of them might work on the insulin receptors, some of them might do other things. So avoiding toxins, because that alone can probably lead one down the path of diabetes. And I'm also told that if you eat a lot of protein, that what it's going to do is that will raise your insulin if you've got it as well. So the way to get around that is to eat fat with the meat, and that leads one to say it's got to be organic because most of the toxins are stored in the fat.
About the diet. Can you hear me? So basically, regarding this vegan diet, I tried to go vegan diet, like not really vegan. I just tried to cut. First, I wanted to cut meat and ate very occasionally eggs and fish, but I ate like tofu and all vegetable diet. So within like 5 months, I became totally, I don't know, I started to have dementia and I couldn't function absolutely. So I don't know how people do that.
Is there a question in there?
Yeah. So yes, so it's like with regarding this vegan diet, how you can survive.
Hi, I'm going to talk about how I healed my tumor using raw vegan, but that was 17 years ago. And then recently I decided to try it again because I've been reading all these books about being vegan. And I did it for 10 months, and it wasn't a good thing because when I had my blood tests, they were all like A1C was up, everything was off. And so I spoke to my nutritionist, and she said, I'm a B positive blood type, and Bs need animal protein. So that's what I'm going with. I'm back to eating animals, and again, they're pastured, they're organic, like that. But it's not for everybody. Everyone's different.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of medical literature that isn't mainstream that deals with a topic that's described as metabolic typing. And people who are fast oxidizers and people who are parasympathetic on the sympathetic parasympathetic basis, they need a fairly high nucleic acid content in their diet, and meat is where that mostly comes from, and organ meat is the richest source of that. So anytime I run across a vegan or a raw vegan who's ethically driven to be a vegan, what I tell them is that, and it's failing, I tell them you need to put 1% of your diet that's non-vegan and just focus on organ meats from healthy animals that are pasture raised, and so that you don't get the hormones and you don't get the toxins and you don't have fatty livers. One of the things that happens when animals are force-fed corn, for example, and force-fed moldy corn, which is the standard treatment for fattened animals and fattened cows in the United States, is that the liver becomes fatty, and therefore all of the toxins that the liver can't metabolize are stored in that fat. And so the liver becomes acutely toxic as a result of that. But if you eat a small amount of liver, maybe something like once a week from an animal that's pasture raised and treated well, you get the nucleic acids that your body may need, but you can still do the calorie restriction and other high fiber benefits, colon benefits, cancer benefits of a vegan diet. You're just not 100% vegan. You're only 99% or 95% or whatever kind of figure that you want to do. And most of the people do better. But there are some people who need a fairly high amount of fat, a high amount of meat to get that nucleic acids. And the only other vegan source for that is yeast. And that's number one on the food allergy list. So I don't recommend it to anybody to eat yeast all the time. You don't mean nutritional yeast, right? Yeah, nutritional yeast. Yeah, any kind of yeast. Yeah.
You're referring to the ketogenic diet. There's also research, I think Dave Asprey is exploring intermittent ketosis with assistance of MCT oils. But also there's a guy named Longo who's studying a fasting mimicking diet. And I believe he says if you do this a couple times a year, that your health, longevity, and all these things are pretty spectacular.
All right. Sure.
Well, I suggest that you all stop by our table here at the Weston A. Price, because that is what we promote, is real food, healthy animals, just the way our ancestors used to eat. And you're getting your fat. You need your fat for your vitamin A and your vitamin D. That's why so many people are deficient in those things today. So stop by and grab a flyer and check it out. We have a local chapter that's open. It's free to anyone to join.
All right. Any more questions? Okay.